harmony and morality are luxuries created by society, gifted to the species that sits atop the food chain, humans. But what happens when that position becomes threatened? What if, in the name of survival, we act in ways that question our understanding of humanity? The invasive species of this story is the Shiki, corpses brought back to life through vampirism. By nature, their actions are driven by the need, like us, to survive, raising the question, are they monsters or is this simply natural selection at work? The anime weaves a story that challenges our sense of right and wrong, leaving us unsure of who or what is morally justified. The intent of this analysis is to break down the themes that present themselves, the philosophy certain characters live by, and the intent behind mankind's actions. In this episode of Making Sense, I can promise answers to the story, but I can't provide fundamental truths. After all, in Shiki, like in reality itself, nothing is ever simply right or wrong. When survival is what drives predator and prey, which can truly be called evil? We don't condemn wolves for hunting deer, bears for catching fish, lions for killing zebras, nor do we fault the prey for fighting back. But what happens when both the hunter and the hunted are intelligent life forms capable of thought, morality, and choice? Deep in the Japanese countryside lies a village, much like any other rural homestead. Small, clannish, wary of outsiders. Sotoba is a peaceful place, quiet and traditional, but these comforts come with a price. Traditionalism survives by rejecting modernity. It's a rule of the universe that things evolve. Society follows that course, whether you intend to accept that fact or not. There's nothing wrong with choosing to live by the old ways, but scorning others who want change, such as Megumi, will only lead to quicker decay. Yet Megumi's disdain for those who choose tradition is no less toxic. This conflict between modernity and traditionalism leaves the village and its people between stagnation and decline. Sotoba is surrounded by mountains, connected to the world by only a single national road. Yet even that one route of outside contact creates unease and fear of what may come in from it. The village's conservatism, preserving what they believe is a pure way of life, carries consequences like arrogance and superstition, but progression has its own faults as well. Change can be unpredictable. It disrupts stability and threatens what many believe to be order. The European-style mansion perched atop Sotoba's mountain stands as a symbol of this intrusion, a monument to the outside world pressing in on their way of life. The family who moves into this foreign house embody the corruption or perhaps disruption of Sotoba's long-held traditions. The Kirishikis are foreign, exotic, and all around strange. They don't fit into the village, yet still some villagers welcome them in, while others are suspicious and a few outright despise them. Contrary to stereotypes, the countryside holds all kinds of people. Those who wish to stay, those who long to leave, those bound by a duty, and those seeking peace. But when new blood enters a small, isolated world, cultures inevitably will clash. And in Sotoba, that collision is far grander. The Kirishikis are Shiki, as anyone who's seen the anime or read the novel knows. It isn't a well-hidden fact. You can likely gather from their first appearance they're anything but normal, and their arrival aligns with inflated disappearances and deaths in the village. Like vampires, they feed on humans, not out of malice, but out of necessity. If they don't, they die. They're simply following the law of the jungle. Kill to survive. But when it's our kind that are the prey, can we still describe the relationship as part of the natural order? Or does the Shiki's existence feel like an attack on our own? We see the Shiki as evil because they kill us to survive. But by that logic, are we not evil to the pigs we slaughter for bacon, or the chickens whose eggs we consume? Do we call a bear or a tiger evil for attacking humans? Or is evil a concept unique to life, intelligent enough to grasp morality itself? If we kill the Shiki in retaliation, would that not make us monsters in their eyes? The Kirishikis move in, feed on villagers, and those who die often return as part of the undead, expanding the Shiki population and spreading their way of life. Their invasion mirrors our own actions on Earth. We destroy ecosystems, wipe out entire species, and call it part of natural selection, justified because humans oftentimes believe they're the most important entity in the universe. This idea is known as anthropocentrism, but the Shiki's existence challenges that value. If humans rationalize destruction of other life with their own survival, then the Shiki's struggle for survival can be seen that way too. Evil then feels like a label, something we use to define actions that go against what we want to believe is the natural way of things, namely anything that threatens our superiority as a living thing. But what exactly is responsible for creating this self-serving ideology? As Tsuneko Kirishiki says to the monk Seishin, all living things fear death. Whether good or evil, divine or demonic, intelligent or ignorant, no life naturally desires its own end. Be it Shiki or human, the instinct to live remains the same. That fear of death, of an end of life, is responsible for the birth of anthropocentrism, but the challenge to it remains. The clash between these two forms of intelligent life breeds moral ambiguity. Humans killed the Shiki in self-defense, despite their existence as intelligent beings who hold both memories of their human life and life as a Shiki. None of it changes the fact that letting them live would result in the end of human existence in this village, so it feels like the natural response to want to kill them. Still, many of us, myself included, feel pity for them. But the reality is I'm human. I believe I can justify my own survival, my species' survival, which logically tells me that makes the Shiki my enemy. But after thinking about it for a while, I realized something. I was falling into the same paranoia and fear that consumed the villagers of Sotoba that led them on a massacre against the Shiki. I feared their kind because I saw them kill. Over 22 episodes, they slaughtered villagers, city folk, children, elders. That fear solidified my alliance with my tribe and my detest for what jeopardized my people's life. But if I pull myself out from that fear, that primal instinct that tells me to eliminate this possible threat to my life, I see that I was blinded to the idea of coexistence, of any path where we could live side by side. Maybe that concept sounds naive to you, but for a moment, just like I did, set your fear aside. Accept that there is always going to be the possibility they could attack you, but the reverse exists as well. You could always attack them. Second, you must also realize that as two beings both capable of complex thought, the possibility of reaching a resolution between your two species could exist. Think about for a moment whether it could have been possible, because it was. Tsuneko believed synthetic blood might sustain lives without the need to actually kill humans. Blood donations could have worked as well, allowing another way to survive without killing. Yet these peaceful alternatives were never tried. Why? Why did she decide to overtake the village instead of reaching out about possibly living in cohabitance? The answer is rather simple. Tsuneko and the Shiki never believed greater humanity would accept their existence. Only a few humans have ever seen them as anything beyond monsters to fear and kill. The failure to reach peace falls on both sides because no one ever tried. Maybe like me, you didn't even consider it until the blood was spilled and the war for survival was already over. Caught in fear and hysteria, humans can justify anything, even killing, if it's a means of protecting ourselves. I mean, we already have a hard enough time attaining acceptance of differences within our own species. How could we ever accept the undead who need our blood to live? It's idealistic to think there could be peace between the two, and sadly, we had no one idealistic enough to attempt such a plan in this story. Thus, we end where we are, a battle for survival. But the line in the sand isn't drawn perfectly straight. Some humans take the side of the Shiki, others act in self-interest. And among the Shiki, there are those who show more humanity than mankind itself, those who reject their natural order. Shiki is one of the most philosophically rich stories in anime, populated by characters with deeply conflicting ideals. Now that the larger conflict is clear to you, the story is best explored through these differing perspectives, each one a reflection of what it means to live die and justify life. And who better to begin with than the one who becomes the bringer of death to protect life? A man of science and logic, Ozaki lives by a single rule: protect human life. That principle defines him as a doctor and shapes every choice he makes regarding the Shiki. He approaches the crisis with a form of utilitarian cruelty, convinced that the ends justify the means. His actions are those we would normally condemn, but because they aim to end the deaths in Sotoba, we rationalize the process. His torture of his wife after she transforms into a Shiki exemplifies this. To him, it's a necessary act, a step towards understanding their anatomy so that he can eliminate the threat. Yet that very reasoning is paradoxical. To preserve life, he ushers in death. Ozaki believes humanity holds a higher moral ground, as if they are chosen of some divine order, yet the atrocities committed in the name of preservation mirror those of their enemies. They erase one group to protect another. It isn't evil, but it isn't pure either. The Shiki never choose their existence nor their hunger. They kill only to avoid starvation. They didn't ask to exist. They didn't ask to kill humans. So to justify eradication of this member of the animal kingdom, Ozaki adopts a form of nihilistic humanism, the belief that preserving humanity outweighs any form of compassion. But even this belief folds under its own contradiction. By killing as they do, the villagers strip away the humanity in being human, the restraint, the empathy, the compassion that once defined them. The killings grow increasingly cruel as if the villagers begin to take pleasure in killing the undead who were once their neighbors and friends. Eventually they kill humans as well, deeming them traitors or just killing them because of a misunderstanding. They claim to be defending life, yet their actions reveal something deeper. They're really defending identity, the illusion that being human makes them superior to anything that threatens their dominance on Earth, even if that means killing other humans that think otherwise. So that makes us question, what is humanity? If being human means mercy, understanding, and moral judgment, then the villagers have completely lost that. But if humanity is defined by the instinct to survive, to protect one's own at any cost, then perhaps Ozaki and the villagers find justification in humanity and in their actions. Yet that would mean accepting cruelty as the true nature of humanity. So where do you stand? Do you believe humanity is inherently good, an ideal that represents the best of all living beings? Or do you believe humanity reflects the true nature of humans, cruel, instinctual, pragmatic? Ozaki's perspective reveals how malleable morality really is, how quickly it can be warped to justify eradication when survival is at stake. The villagers justify killing the Shiki with the same reasoning the Shiki use to feed, because they must. The only difference lies in perspective, and that's precisely where Seishiro Kirishiki comes in. Seishiro is a human who lives alongside and aids the Shiki, playing the role of father when they move into Sotoba. Yet his role can neither be simplified as good nor evil. He may protect those who kill his own kind, but to him, this isn't a moral transgression. His philosophy on existence recognizes that the line between human and monster is drawn by circumstance. The Shiki are simply following the biological truths of their nature, their hunger, no more evil than humanity's own need to eat. So by this thought process, Seishiro rejects human hypocrisy, the reality that mankind condemns the Shiki while committing the very same actions. He denies the notion of human superiority over other forms of life. This detachment from mankind makes him appear almost sociopathic, unmoved by death, indifferent to human suffering, taking the lives of villagers during the Shiki massacre. It can be a difficult concept to grasp, that someone who views human life as unimportant may not be evil, but rather living in alignment with his own truth. There's a clear line of logic in Seishiro's philosophy, more so than in Ozaki's or in the villagers, which might be what makes it so unsettling. A man willing to take human life for the sake of the Shiki holds fewer contradictions than man's own ideals. Seishiro doesn't pretend to have some superior justification in killing like the villagers attempt. He simply performs the act if it will protect what's precious to him. His care for Sunako, despite being human while she is Shiki, demonstrates that coexistence was never impossible. It was merely something humanity as a whole was incapable of achieving. As I noted earlier, there are those among us who can't even accept our own kind because they come from different borders or practice different cultures. People are so attached to believing their way of life is moral and right that they forget one simple truth: the universe is indifferent. There is no absolute right or wrong. People have only convinced themselves that there is. Perhaps believing in good and evil, in humanity's superiority over all life, helps you move forward. Yet that way of thinking is riddled with paradoxes, and I struggle to understand why anyone would willingly confine themselves within such a box. The universe is an unbiased and uncaring entity. Humans are just one cog in the clock of life. The wheels turn and we search for ways to rationalize our existence. Yet, what happens when, unlike Seishiro, one cannot sever the grip of traditional moral structures when faced with their collapse? While the clock freezes, and one's mind is paralyzed in inaction. Seishin is a man raised in the Buddhist priesthood, inherited through his family lineage, yet he becomes a monk who finds himself indifferent to the moral absolutes of religion and ethics. He rejects the idea of humanity as a superior, God-chosen species, which allows him to empathize with the other, in this case, the Shiki. He sees them as a mirror of humanity, creatures that, like humans, must kill to survive. Because he denies the concept of anthropocentrism, he remains detached from the unfolding events in Sotoba and can process them from a more existential point of view than those that actively fight for survival. Seishin does not want to kill all the Shiki, yet he cannot fully condone their actions either, as he is a human. This mental paralysis stems from an inability to find solid ethical or moral ground in the situation, uncertain of what exactly he should be doing. Should he be aiding the villagers in their crusade? Should he allow them to bring extinction to a species? Or should he aid the Shiki in survival? Through this pondering, eventually he arrives at a fundamental truth, one illuminated through the book he had been writing as the story plays out. In the tale, there exists two brothers, one who could do no right, Cain, and one who could do no wrong, Abel. The two brothers are stand-ins for the relationship between Shiki and humans, as well as the duality within oneself. The two live in a society atop a highland, close to the sky, yet one day Cain kills Abel, leaving us initially to ponder why. Banished from the highland, Cain wanders the wasteland, haunted by the Shiki of Abel, when eventually the truth becomes clear. These two are one and the same, a single being split into two, each a mirror of the other. Abel thanks Cain for killing him, saying he found the highland suffocating, while he appeared pure atop the highland that was merely a construct imposed by society. Abel represents the tatemai, the public facade one wears to fit in. In the wasteland, however, the two halves are equal. Societal rules no longer define them, meaning his purpose to protect the honne, the true self, is no longer needed. Cain embodies the honne and lives on as his brother vanishes, Abel returning to the true self, the two becoming one once more. The murder becomes less an act of violence than a form of suicide, a choice to reject absolutism in human ethics and societal constraints. When he entered the wasteland, Cain struggled to find meaning, haunted by his former understanding of life and of morality. This place represents the void that is nihilism, but the concept is merely a temporary state if one is committed to finding purpose in life. Abel's Shiki vanishing opens the path to a new way of seeing existence, an acceptance of no absolute truths, tempered by the lingering weight of conscience. This is a form of existentialism. Many characters in Shiki hover between the wasteland of nihilism and the possibilities of existential understanding, navigating morality, survival, and the consequences of their actions. Both Shiki and human action is shadowed by morality. It is not unique to either species. Shiki are often haunted by the morality of taking human life, while humans wrestle with the ethics of killing intelligent life out of fear and hysteria. Survival demands these two species act, yet conscious remains. We want to believe we are justified, moral people, but continued existence challenges that notion. Life must be taken, plant, animal, or in the case of Shiki, human, to survive. So how does one rationalize that erasure of life? Everyone has a different answer. Various philosophies exist because no one agrees on how to view or rationalize life. Even if there was a universal truth, we are not privy to it. The only thing that exists is words and musings from people with too much time on their hands, which does include me. Seishin shows us that what divides morality isn't species, but decisions. We choose how to live our lives, and we must bear the consequences of those choices. Do we dress our deeds in pretty words, or do we accept them at face value? The longer we try to justify ourselves as morally superior, the more exhausted we become. Every one of us survives by taking life. Maybe it isn't human, but life is still life. It is natural law that for a living being to continue living, they must consume another. In that sense, life as an idea is immortal, for it must always exist, because without it, nothing would. There is no existence outside that condition, not Shiki nor Jinno. So far we've analyzed the philosophies of human characters, but now we'll shift focus to the Shiki. The oldest Shiki we know is Tsunako, turned centuries ago by one of the Daywalkers, a Jinno. With that comes the grim reality that she has to have slaughtered countless humans to survive. So where does that leave her? A typical monster movie might paint her as an uncaring, evil entity with no regard for the lives she's taken. But Tsunako feels despair. She accepts that she is a Shiki, that she must kill humans to live, but with that she carries the burden of the lives she has taken. She shows us that Shiki are not devoid of humanity, and in doing so offers a clearer understanding of what humanity truly is, the coexistence of morality and cruelty. The two ideas may conflict, but they remain intertwined. One is the shadow of the other, not too different from Abel and Cain's relationship. Her dream is to create a place where her kind does not have to hide in the shadows, does not have to play the role of monster. Like in Seishin's story, she wishes to build her own highland, where her people define what is morally right or wrong. All it takes is a majority to establish a society and the rules that govern it. That is the intent behind overtaking the village. It's not a plan to wipe out humanity or seek revenge for past scorn. It's an idealistic hope that her people can live freely by their own rules, just as man did when erecting civilizations across the world. Tsunako understands that it's natural for man to hate them, yet still she accepts both humans and Shiki, with Seishiro and Seishin as examples. These two are unique in the fact that they accept her despite her existence as a Shiki. Thus she shows mutual respect by never turning or killing them. This demonstrates compassion. Her bonds are acts of conscious choice, showing that the essence of humanity, the soul of what makes humans human, persists even in the Shiki. The only thing that changes is their nature, that to survive they must kill humans, which does alter their moral behavior, but their identity remains. They are still the person they were before death. It is almost as if they have evolved, which raises an intriguing question. Are Shiki evolved forms of humans? And if so, does that imply that Jinno are a perfected form of life? Jinno exists between life and death. They are immortal, able to survive on either a human or Shiki diet, resistant to sunlight, and possess superior strength to both human and Shiki. Their bodies are alive, yet their power exceeds the laws of the natural world. If strength defines the hierarchy of life, then Jinno stand unquestionably at the top. Thus, just as humans once did, how they wield that superiority reveals much about their personal truths. The Jinno Tatsumi serves the Shiki and is a key factor in their success in taking over the village. One might wonder why a Jinno would protect the Shiki given his unique existence and being untethered to their rules and obligations. And there could be a few reasons for that. For one, Tatsumi sees the Shiki as the weaker beings. Though immortal, they are more vulnerable than humans due to the moral consequences of feeding and their need to hide from sunlight. Because of that, he develops a connection to their struggles, particularly because of Sunako. There is some kind of connection between Tatsumi and Sunako, a bond that forms which gives him purpose despite his otherwise isolating existence. It would seem that even Jinno feel loneliness. With that, we can view Tatsumi's stance as morally gray. He lacks the tribalism that governs humans or the newer Shiki. He does not care that Seishiro or Seishin are human. If anything, he respects them more than most. His concern is protecting the one who gives his existence purpose. And ironically, that purpose leads him down a path similar to Ozaki's, justifying actions in the name of preservation. He believes the Shiki have a right to exist, so he defends them and works to realize Sunako's dream world, though he is always ready to abandon that ideal if her life is at risk. That loyalty makes him unique, and by the end it aligns him with Seishin. He ends up entrusting his heart to the man, hoping Seishin will protect Sunako, as he has time and time again. It would seem he conveys a sense of altruism in regards to Sunako, further exemplifying that Shiki are just as close to humanity as man itself. Natsuno is a mirror for Tatsumi. A villager turned Jinno, he provides insight into how their existence differs from that of a Shiki. He was slowly drained by his friend Toru, who became a Shiki, a boy who attempted to resist his hunger but still fed each night on Natsuno's blood. The slow drain and the choice to never kill Natsuno allowed his body to undergo cellular changes that triggered the Jinno transformation. In this way, the presence of humanity and compassion in the Shiki who feeds on a human is precisely what creates a mutation into higher life. However, Toru's decision ultimately leads to the downfall of all Shiki within the village. Natsuno acts against their interest, not out of loyalty to humans or the village, but from his own dislike for them. He has always followed his own self-interest, guided by his personal moral compass. Unlike Seishin, who is paralyzed by moral uncertainty, Natsuno never allows himself to be constrained by sources of external morality like tradition or religion. Natsuno remains true to himself, even as his body mutates and his mind changes. He is self-aware and serves no higher purpose. He demonstrates that humans often overcomplicate or rationalize their actions, when in reality we often act simply because we want to, or because circumstances provoke us, not because abstract ideals demand it. So where does that leave us? Are we meant to examine the reasons people act as they do, or simply accept their actions at face value? The short answer is that both approaches are useful, depending on the situation. Basically, it's complicated. Natsuno's path, serving his own self-interest, is justified in his view, yet his interests are more complex than he admits. So both are right. He often acts out of concern for others. He allows Toru to feed from him, and he works to protect and prepare Kaori and Akira to survive. While he frames these actions as personal desire, they are undeniably selfless and altruistic. They do not do anything to protect him, and in Toru's case, he is initially harmed. This makes him and Tatsumi all too similar. They only differ on which side they eventually die for. This becomes the larger truth after analyzing each character's perspective. Everyone is guided by their own rationalities, their own principles. We define our morals and use them to justify our existence, to justify consuming other forms of life, to justify continuing to move forward. We live with the burden of taking life, of harming the biomes we inhabit, and the animals we coexist with. We either accept this as a consequence of continued existence, or we justify our perceived superiority over other life. Yet no matter what you think, the point remains. Death is a negative for all living beings. Yet the Shiki challenge our understanding of life and force us to confront the ways in which, in our own reality, we attempt to comprehend it. Life and death are two parts of a cycle, They do not mark the absolute beginning or the absolute end of a line. In many Western religions, life is often described as having a definitive endpoint that liberates the soul and leads to final judgment. It is therefore not surprising that those who view life and death linearly might consider the Shiki to be soulless corpses. However, there is an argument to be had, as historical nuance shows in early Christian thought. It was believed that the dead would rise to go to heaven, which influenced practices such as burial over cremation in many Western countries. But for now, let's just set that aside and shift focus to the East. In many religions of this part of the world, life and death are often seen as part of a cycle. Life begets life, and the soul continues its journey through existence. From this perspective, if the body was to return to life, perhaps the soul has returned as well. So in a small village that still performs physical burials, the possibility for a soul to return and rise as Shiki exists. Following this Eastern way of thinking, Shiki could be seen as humans renewed. Even through a Western lens, if we followed the old way of Christian thinking, they could also be considered a second coming of humanity. In this sense, life comes full circle, even within a supposedly linear worldview. Life begets life. If we think of Shiki as an evolutionary step of the soul and of greater intelligent life, then that would mean Jinno represent the fully mutated form, a perfected life, impervious to aging and natural death. They can still be killed, but their bodies do not decay by the clock of Father Time. Yet still, despite their semi-immortal bodies, in fact they rose from the dead, Shiki still fear the concept of dying, which proves that they are living beings, even if their bodies run cold. The fear of death is a fundamental part of humanity, is it not? Ultimately, no one knows what lies beyond death. It's a door we cannot open until it calls our name. There's no proof of what waits on the other side, no way to confirm that our souls continue through some grand cycle of rebirth, and so we fear it. We fear it because it is unknown. It's the same fear that grips the villagers when they think of the world beyond their borders. The unfamiliar territory terrifies us, and the only way to conquer that fear is to face it, to look directly into the unknown and allow ourselves to question it, to wonder about it. This isn't out of a hope to remove the fear. It's out of hope to understand it, if only a little better. Courage is not found in the absence of fear. It's in the decision to move forward despite it. Death carries profound meaning for mortals. It reminds us that our time is finite, that every action we take ripples through the lives of others, both past and future. What will we do with the time we have as the person we are now? That's a question only you can answer for yourself. I do like to think that death is not an end, but a transformation, a shift in our state of being. What kind of life will come from my death? I don't know. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Even if it's just for the sake of making sense of the story, we think of death as a boundary and the soul as a continuity, we can gain a deeper understanding of the Shiki. We can see them as equals, part of an evolving process of life. Just as the village represents societal stagnation in Japan, the people within it represent the stagnation of humanity itself, a lack of meaningful change, both physically and spiritually, locked in religious dogma and isolated by tribalism. They inhibit the growth of living intelligence and thought by removing itself from the greater world. They resist progress, even while knowing it to be inevitable. Yet that conservatism has a purpose. It forces humanity to question whether their own progression is morally sound, but it also creates a paradox. The moral imperative to protect what one knows can easily give rise to xenophobia, paranoia, and hysteria. The Shiki are not the only threat to this stagnant village, after all. The one who burns it down is human. The horror of Shiki lies in the unsettling truth that humanity kills itself. Man fails man, and human morality is incredibly fragile. When survival is at stake, murder becomes justified, torture is overlooked, and compassion disappears. It's fascinating that morality can even exist in a world so indifferent, and perhaps that's what makes intelligent life unique. Its ability to judge, rationalize, and choose. What that reveals about us and about existence itself is a question we have yet to answer, and that perhaps is the true horror. We don't feel fear in Shiki because we fail to understand the Shiki. We fear them because we understand them all too well. They are a mirror for us, another form of life that challenges our superiority, our way of being. Do we allow the top of the hierarchy to be shared, or do we slaughter them to secure our place as the moralistic rulers of the world? The Shiki are not evil. They are a natural existence, hunting not out of malice but out of necessity. Yet we call them demons because we fear what we cannot control. Throughout mankind's history, we have attempted to chain morality with religion, control change through society, and bend life itself with the pursuits of science and medicine. The true horror lies in seeing ourselves not as God's chosen, but as one more species subject to a universe that assigns no weight to our lives or death. We are simply an existence, no more, no less. Perhaps that is freeing, perhaps that is frightening. That is the goal of horror, to confront our humanity, our morality, our place in a world we cannot dominate. Shiki presents this through a unique lens. If life is cyclical, if consciousness persists beyond death, if we are born anew in our own corpses, yet forced to feed on the species we once were, what does it mean to be human?